Welcome to my show, When Everyone Wins, where a key goal I have for you is shifting from power over and under to power within and between. I'm your host, Judy Ryan. In each episode, I'll share my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWork Systems. I'll help you build trust and emotional and social intelligence. My show, When Everyone Wins, is about creating a life you love and helping others do the same. Welcome, everybody, to When Everyone Wins. I'm so excited about our topic today. I want to just do a little bit of a conversation before I introduce my guests. I will tell you that this topic is on empowering teens and young adults to thrive and create that win-win world. And I just have always had such a strong passion for children and teens and young adults. And as long as LifeWork Systems has been around since 2002, we have worked in a lot of massive multi-year, multi-school reform projects because we know that the young people are our future. And if we want to shift that power over, power under dynamic, we need to have those young people who are already kind of predisposed to that, have the skills and the support that they need to really be part of the systemic changes that are needed. We're working right now with schools in the UK and in New Zealand and in parts of the United States. And I'm super excited about my guests because they are bringing over 30 years of collective experience working with young adults. So I introduce you to Holly Couch and J.P. Watson, who are together. They have distilled the best of mindfulness, neuroscience, emotional intelligence, motivation, and confidence building into a life-changing program. Think about that whole holistic perspective of mindfulness and how that fits in with the way that we function in our neuroscience in our bodies, but also, wrapping that with the skills needed to be able to bring forth that confidence that they need. And I love it on their website. They talk about how coaching is different than therapy because you're really focusing on how do we move into the future? How do we help you have what you need to be your best? So Holly and JP are the co-founders of the Uncommon Education Company, and they're the principal coaches for their Becoming Uncommon Life and Leadership Coaching Program for teens, young adults, and the adults who influence them. After over 30 years in education, they launched their paired coaching business in 2022. They want to impact hundreds of thousands of young people, and I believe they're going to do it. They've got the passion and the determination and the work ethic, and they are going to be providing that mindfulness-based, science-backed programming that guides their participants to master those skills needed for lifelong success. And they have a forthcoming book that they're in process on. I'm going to be asking them to tell you about that. But they've also developed a curriculum and a workbook that really provides the vehicle and for approach that can be scaled and shared globally. And that's what we need today. We need massive systemic change. When paired with their teacher training, as well as their mentoring and conscious leadership development, the becoming uncommon. God, wouldn't that be great if we could become uncommon? Because what's common is not working so well. So they're creating a becoming uncommon movement with limitless application and broad impact. And they're inspired by the ripple effect of creating more self-aware, kind, oh, please God, bring the kindness, compassionate, altruistic, and fulfilled young adults in our world. So without further ado, I introduce you to Holly Couch and J.P. Watson. Welcome, Holly and J.P.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here, Judy, and appreciate the invitation.
You are so welcome. And tell our listeners about your journey and how you came to this point in pulling together such a beautiful system to bring forward.
Yeah, so our journey actually started with my son and the work that I did with my own son who was struggling with learning differences and anxiety, debilitating anxiety. And this all came to fruition when he was in the fourth grade, where it was all so bad that I had to pull him out of school completely and homeschool him for a while to have a rebuilding period. And that's when I took my deep dive into mindfulness, which led to studying mindfulness in education. And from day one, it just made so much sense to me. Why is this not in every school in the world?
Yeah.
We would have a completely different world
Yeah.
if every school had mindfulness and emotional intelligence as part of their program. So I got to work with my own kid, and we studied mindfulness, meditation, yoga, emotional intelligence, and he did a complete 180 in a pretty short amount of time. And by the time he graduated from high school, he was one of their greatest success stories. And you by the time he got out of high school, he was making pretty much straight A's. You would never know that he had ever struggled with anxiety. He was already coaching his own friends.
Yes.
Social challenges and anxiety and all of the things that teenagers struggle with these days. And he is now about to graduate from the college of his dreams. And
Wow.
yeah, and so when he was just about to graduate from high school, the school where he was graduating from, it's a college prep school for kids with learning differences and kids who are on the spectrum and neurodivergent, but I like to call them neurobrilliant.
Yes.
And they basically called and said, whatever you did with Liam, will you please come teach to our kids here?
Wow. They invited
And
you. They invited you. What a success story. And Holly, I love that story because I know I do this work because I was kind of that sort of anxious child, had stomach aches a lot, had to go home from school, a highly sensitive person. He's probably a highly sensitive person. But even if you aren't highly sensitive, I think a lot of young people and adults are struggling with anxiety right now. So even if it's the young teaching the older to be more mindful, we're so stuck in these rigid systems of just doing these conventional things that we ignore what is now called trauma informed. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I see what you are doing is bringing in a trauma informed approach where you're considering that many people are under anxiety and stress and need to be helped and supported in that aspect so that they're free to be academically strong and confident and all of that. So how hopeful your message is, Holly, for so many people. And congratulations to you for being the kind of mom that didn't just say, get over it, suck it up or any of that. You said, I'm going to dive and figure out how to help. And now you're ready to help thousands.
absolutely, yes.
So our journey obviously began a long time before we even knew each other. So this is my 27th year working in or with schools. And I recognized very early on that we as schools, and I was working in independent schools exclusively, we as schools were not developing or providing the opportunities for character, leadership, and responsibility development at a level that would make a difference. We weren't being intentional. And I think that's the biggest word is intentional. In schools, we tend to say, oh, we do this, 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 and this for leadership development. Well, it tends to be only the students who were in elected positions or who have been ordained as leaders by their peers. And so the focus is only on the few. Whereas I knew we could be intentional and begin to develop those traits, those character traits, those abilities to be responsible for one's actions, and then ultimately leadership characteristics and qualities in each of our students. It wasn't just for the select few.
JP, you are so spot on with what I believe as well, that if you only give, even in companies, leadership development is usually limited to the titled leaders. And really the reality is every adult and child needs to be developed in their leadership. So It's an inclusive way. And what it does is it creates a different kind of person that goes out into society and goes out into the workplace. You talked about character traits. That is lacking so much right now in our world. It's so glaringly obvious. And so to develop that character and also that personal responsibility. But you probably, like me, know that if we don't give back to kids and teens their personal power and help them be intentional with that power and to
Mhm.
take care of themselves with that power, they cannot actually go forward as the leaders that they could be. So thank you for describing it that way, that it's intentional, it's leadership, it's character, and it's responsibility.
Yeah.
And
Well,
many adults don't have that.
well, and that's what's so fascinating now as a school consultant. In addition to the work that we do, schools don't even recognize that all of their faculty need that same leadership development.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be focused on the department chairs or the division heads. It needs to be each of your faculty members develop to their fullest potential. And that's where, we'll talk about it later, but becoming uncommon is intentional. It's not be uncommon, it's become uncommon, becoming uncommon, because it's a process. It's not a one, oh, I'm going to be uncommon in this moment. No, it's a process. It's an acquisition of skills. It's knowing who you are. And while, yes, we're focused on teens and young adults, certainly, this applies across the board. Like,
Yes.
our approach can be applicable to businesses, can be applicable to adults, to colleges and universities. We just know through our experience that one place where we can have an incredible impact is from 13 to 22. And then
Right.
bring that up to 30, 13 to 30, we can have such an incredible impact because those young people, teens and young adults, are really so pliable,
They
so
are.
malleable in terms of how they're going to approach life. So if we can help them realize that that power lies within,
Yes.
all of it lies within. And if you approach life in some specific, intentional ways, it comes out in such a positive, impactful way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about it's really good for everyone. It's good for the adults. It's good for the young people. And yes, they are more pliable and they're also more courageous.
Right.
They're often, when they're given a path, they're more optimistic. Otherwise, they can become suicidal. And that's not a joke. I mean, it really is that dire that they're so hungry to be authentic, to be able to use that power. And even though you're describing it as becoming uncommon, you're really saying we need systemic change because it's uncommon to have new human systems, and really healthy human systems help everybody.
Yes.
So I love it that you see that. And one of the things, I'm just going to go a little bit of a side road. When we worked in school reform, we worked with the parents, the teachers, the administrators, and the students at all the different levels, but especially when we did a high school project where we worked with those kids from 13 to 18 in high school.
Yeah.
But what I wish we had done even further that we do in companies, and maybe this is a seed for you all, is I wish we would have mixed all those levels like we do in corporations. Because when I raised my 5 children and they took turns running a family meeting with my husband and I, we were really a model for shared power then. I had to learn how to not steamroll a 5-year-old because I'm a very dominant leader type person.
Yeah.
And kids need to go into the world of technology and globalization and know how to be flexible about leading and following and having like critical thinking skills. So tell me a little bit more about how you are bringing that personal responsibility, that character, that emotional intelligence. Either one of you or both of you, share how you're bringing that about. Like, what are some of the skills and concepts that you're talking with them about?
Definitely self-awareness,
Mhm.
and which self-awareness is kind of hard to cultivate without mindfulness.
Yeah.
So mindfulness is the foundation of everything that we teach. Um, for teenagers to step into self-awareness at such an early age can make such a huge difference in the relationships that they build with how they occur to other people. with the success that they can have, whether it's in the classroom or at their first job or in college or at their, as they step into their career.
Mhm.
And, for more kids to have more understanding about emotions and how their minds work, that's when they have a choice. That's when they can make better decisions for themselves.
Yes. Yeah, and it's really interesting because you'd think we would all know more about emotions, and we really don't. We don't have that. Like I've had adults in corporate settings where we teach them to ask themselves, "What am I feeling, and what do I want?" And some of them have said, "I've never asked myself. I'm in my 40s and 50s, and I've never asked myself." So being able to help those kids, then those young adults, to start by saying, "What am I feeling, and what do I want?" And not from a place, because I can tell from reading about you guys, you want the teens and young adults to be healthy individuals, but you also want them to use that healthy I to be healthy we, to be in service to the greater community as well as to their own well-being.
Absolutely. We're just finishing our chapter on altruism. And just to have more teens thinking about, what they can do in service in the community. There's so much science behind it, and how, again, it is a win-win, because service to the community wins, but it does so much for the individual, building confidence, reducing stress, reducing anxiety, getting them out of their own heads and out
Yes.
of their own drama.
Yep.
And when they have that confidence, they're going to be more willing to step up and do things because they're not going to be in protection, right? Holly, you mentioned that you have, I think you said your son would bring kids in from the neighborhood to be coached or supported. Did I
Oh,
understand?
it was just a natural occurrence. Just his friends would turn to him for advice,
Yes.
and
Yes.
he just naturally attracted kids who are on the spectrum. Like, all of his friends are on the spectrum, which is so cool to see.
Yeah.
And I'll have parents to this day say, "Your kid changed all of our lives."
Yes.
He helped them with their emotion regulation. He helped them to regulate their nervous systems because he learned how to do it. So, at such an early age,
That
he was
is such,
helping them with their relationships and their
yes.
romantic relationships.
And they don't have to come running to the adults. They're able to trust one another as they grow in that intelligence. That is so powerful, that story. And I also think it's so interesting. I don't know if you're probably familiar with this, but have you guys heard about the telepathy tapes with the people on the spectrum?
Yes, we just recently heard about this. I had never heard of it before.
Yeah, so I just want to mention it because the people listening might want to know about this, but that a lot of times we've thought of people on the spectrum as though they have this disability, when science is beginning to show us that they have this extraordinary, as you called it, brilliance, that even some of them that are learning, that are non-speaking, are able to demonstrate now that they have telepathic strengths, and how important that is to understanding one another. If we can kind of be empathetic and telepathic, and they're here to show us the way. So how beautiful that your own story reflects that in your family with you, Holly, with your son. So, yeah.
It's been really, Judy, it's been so much fun coming together, to come back to your original question of how did we get here. I was Liam's principal his senior year.
Wow.
So I knew Liam before I knew Holly.
Oh, great.
And over the course of the next 2 years, we both were separately and unbeknownst to the other, separated and then divorced. And we had been colleagues when Holly was teaching mindfulness and yoga. And it had begun the conversation around total wellness for teens. And so we continued that conversation on hikes, and then ultimately saw the synergy between the work that Holly had been doing and the work I was stepping in. I had just been certified with a conscious education company and was going to be stepping into that work. And we really saw that opportunity to bring the work that both of us were doing together, and then ultimately, creating Uncommon Education Company so that we could bring that specifically to teens and young adults.
How
And it's
awesome that you
been
have
a
each other.
fun journey.
You have each other to support each other because you share the common values, you share the common visions. And I know you are, I believe you're not a married couple, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but it's still kind of a holistic version of Parent Trap, only partner trap.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite dreamy, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, everybody that is doing this kind of work that you're doing, you are attracting others to you like one another to be supportive in bringing this out because it's a big deal. And if you would, could you tell me a little bit about any of the challenges that you face? There's probably people that say to you, oh, mindfulness, mindfulness. It sounds like that kumbaya, hug a tree stuff. At least that I don't even promote it that directly, and I get some of that really big pushback. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you've been through that have been positive, but also have been difficult?
I'll start with the positive because of course, we've presented our work to some schools that didn't see the value, and honestly, we don't choose to focus on that a whole lot. We're choosing on finding the schools who do see it,
Yes.
and so with the program that we created for, let's say, just for individual coaching, it's a 3-month program. And it is science based, science and mindfulness based. And yet every time we start to see progress with a client and quickly, I'm still surprised every time. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's working again. Like it's so incredible to
Yes.
watch the transformations that take place.
Yeah.
And again, rather quickly. And so that's I learned this with yoga ed, learning to teach yoga in schools, and they said, focus more on the kids who are participating, give your energy to the kids who are participating, have patience and grace with the kids who are not, but don't let that be your focus.
Mhm.
And so I kind of adopted that same philosophy in business.
Yeah.
We're going to focus on the people who do see it. We're going to focus on the ones who do get excited about it. Now, the challenge there is we know how powerful this work is. We know that it changes lives. So yes, there is some frustration there that how can we get to more people? How can more people experience the work that we are doing? So that's the frustrating part. Not, I'm not going to challenge anyone's beliefs around mindfulness or, but the frustration is, God, we know what this does in people's lives.
I totally get that because it's countercultural, but it's not mainstream. So it's how do we bring this mainstream?
Mhm.
And so I love the way you answered that because you didn't focus on all the negatives. In fact, you even said when there's not openness, we just don't focus. Because I'm the same way. And I literally pray, please send me the people who are ready for this because I don't want to push any rocks up the hill, is the way I say it. So good for you that you're not going to focus on what isn't happening and really put your energy where it is. And hopefully, even with those kids that aren't participating, they start to want to because they see what's occurring in the ones that are. And
Yes,
you haven't
9 times
closed
out
the
of 10
door
they
on
do.
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you just can't push them. That's not gonna.
no, you can't push the adults either.
Correct, correct.
JP, what were you going to say? I
I
can see.
wanted to share, just related to what Holly was just sharing. Um, just a quick story about a client who I had no idea going in if this client was going to be open to meditation, open to mindfulness. Pretty rough, gruff client. Just wasn't sure. So we got into our beginning sessions, just getting to know the client and shared a lot, but there was a lot that wasn't shared. And then in between my first and second session, um, a headboard was punched, a fist went through a wall, a fist went through a door. And so it was all of a sudden we're in triage mode while coaching, for sure, trying to help with emotional regulation for sure.
Yeah.
And what this client found was beginning meditation that week. Over the course of the next 3 weeks, his whole life changed.
Wow.
His
Wow.
grandparents commented, his parents commented, they're divorced, both of them separately to us, sharing what a profound change. And Judy, I can't take credit for that
Well, you can
because
take a little bit. You can
it
take a
was
little bit,
his,
JP.
but I couldn't make him meditate. I provided him the tools. He chose to step into that.
That's absolutely
And,
true. Yes.
and the change took place because he was open, because he was receptive, and literally it turned his life in a different direction.
So JP, I totally understand what you're saying about he is the one that chose. But also you as a man who believes in mindfulness and
Yep.
is a stand for that is a huge invitation to boys and men. And that's why it's so beautiful that you are a man and a woman reaching out together to these young people. And also look at how dire that situation was. You didn't know it was that dire, but who knows where that rage would have gone, that dysregulation would have gone had you not provided a solution right then. And that's the sad part about it is there's so many powder kegs, not only turned against others, but turned against self, that that's why I do this work too, is to help alleviate unnecessary suffering that
Yeah.
does not have to go on. Also, in my work, I noticed that even though I'm not promoting like direct mindfulness practices the way you are, we're promoting similar things that are trauma informed and all of that. I see sometimes people even pushing against giving personal power back to young people. When I remember, I often share that my 5 kids all took turns running family meetings by the time they were 5 years old. And I've had people write in their surveys after the talk, that's ridiculous. Kids need to be kids and parents need to let them know who's who. You know, who would object to helping a child feel good about contributing and having power? It's as if a lot of people think that when young people just go off to college, they're all of a sudden going to turn into these responsible, confident adults, and they're not necessarily. So
Yeah, and that's why it's so important, to have that foundation, to have it, in middle school and high school or even younger, but just those little steps of developing, strengthening emotional intelligence and using mindfulness as a way to do it, because it literally is the easiest tool to use to develop emotional intelligence, from self-awareness, to self-mastery or emotional regulation, empathy, perspective taking, and those relationship skills, social intelligence. That's what emotional intelligence is about. And that and mindfulness are the threads throughout our entire book that just weave in and out of every aspect of the skill building
I'm
for
so glad you
lifelong.
just brought up the book, because in this next 5 minutes before we go to break, I want you to tell me about that book. And I do want to say, when you use the word empathy, empathy is so critical in our world today, and yet it's treated by many as though it's a weakness and something that should be avoided. So I love it that is that, and that sense of awareness and that sense of altruism is all tied together. Could you tell the listeners and myself more about your book, what it's called, what it's designed to do, what kind of gaps are you filling, what kind of value are you providing?
Absolutely. So the book again is called Becoming Uncommon, because, as you were saying before, unfortunately, what is common these days is it's not awesome.
Oh,
It's not effective or productive. And so basically, we're wanting to help teens learn to intentionally cultivate positive emotions and positive states of being for themselves first, but then the ripple effect of that, how that's going to affect people around them, how it's going to affect their relationships. One of the points we bring up quite a bit in the book, and that I bring up quite a bit to my students, is the quality of your life has everything to do with the quality of your relationships. And
yeah.
so again, cultivating positive emotions, cultivating positive states of being, for you and those around you. It's huge. And to teach teens at an early age to intentionally create their lives instead of just floating through on default mode,
Yes.
learning to be more intentional about it at such a young age. Oh my word. Like,
Yes.
what does that mean for each individual person? And then what could that mean for the world when
Yeah.
you have less suffering, less emotional suffering, and more happy, more fulfilled people out in the world?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think young people want to be positive. They want to bring optimistic ideas to the table. But if they're not given the skills, the support, or the role modeling, or even just the information, they don't know how to even begin because they're kind of left with that default. I know one of the tools that we used in our school reform work, you might be talking on this a little bit, or something like it, is appreciative inquiry, where you ask questions that are appreciative, like, what's the best thing that's happened to you today? It's different than how are you today? Or
Yep.
tell me what you're most proud of today or this week. And we did a project where 200 kids in high school we were trying to get more of them to stay in school and graduate because it was in the most at-risk neighborhoods. So we invited adults that were all walks of life that had graduated high school, and we had the kids asking them things like, tell me a time when you wanted to quit school or quit a sports team, but you didn't. And what gave you the determination and the resilience, and who supported you, and all those kind of questions. So there are so many skills and tools out there to help those young people to have a positive self-regulation, of positive emotions, hope and optimism for the future, which are all
Absolutely.
intrinsic motivators.
Yes.
So JP,
I
did you?
love that you guys did that, had them asking questions.
Yeah.
One other thing I do want to touch on before I pass it over to JP to talk more about our book is the fact that kids are so dysregulated these days. Their nervous systems are just fried from everything going on in the world, from the online world, from social media, social pressures, academic pressures. And so that is one of the things that we definitely touch on in the book, is how they can calm their nervous systems. I teach them about vagal tone, about breath work, about meditation and yoga, because it's really hard to do much else as far as reaching your potential, as far as going after your goals, if your nervous system is dysregulated. That
Well,
has to happen first.
I love it that you're saying this, because if you can't even talk about it collectively. So the fact that you go to schools or you go into groups of young people and you teach them all at the same time. Now, if they're doing a practice, they don't have to hide it because it's weird,
Right.
because everybody is learning it together and everybody's supporting one another, instead of feeling like I have to hide this vulnerability of my dysregulated anxious system. And by the way, you didn't even mention all the political unrest that maybe they're not part of, but they probably feel it.
They're
So
aware of it.
so
They're
much.
very aware.
Yeah.
So Judy, I think, that you asked about, sharing the book and kind of how it's structured and what our hopeful outcomes are. As I think about our book, and I said earlier, base in emotional intelligence and mindfulness. So those threads run throughout. So self-awareness, self-management, empathy, relationship skills. But we get into gratitude and gratitude practices, health and wellness, and making suggestions for how teens and young adults approach their own health and wellness. Physical, mental, and emotional, all of those. Courage, confidence, and resilience is a whole chapter in and of itself. Altruism, building and maintaining healthy relationships, and then ultimately core values and preferred emotions. So when we're coaching, we actually do that fairly early in our coaching engagement to get them thinking about what are the emotions that they would prefer to feel on a regular basis. So we talk about a time where things didn't go their way, and get them to remember all of those emotions and where they feel it in their body. And then how about times when things did go their way, and do the same thing. And then ultimately get them to identify up to 6 preferred emotions that they would like to feel on a regular basis. And we help them, that's a part of the book, we help them then design their life so that their actions are serving their core values, their purpose, and their preferred emotions. And when you're making decisions and intentionally designing your life with those three things in mind, you're setting yourself up for incredible success.
Yes, and modeling it to everyone around you. So
Right.
I want to hear more about those three things and how you let them and invite them to participate in designing their life as soon as we come back from this break.
Sounds great.
Welcome back, everyone, to When Everyone Wins, where we're shifting power over and power under to power within and power between. And oh my gosh, how much more important could it be? Not at all, than doing that with our teens and young adults, because this is the future of the world, is a shared power model. And before the break, we talked a little bit about your book and about the emotional intelligence and how you are not only helping young people and young adults to become aware, but also to put into practice things so that they're managing and mastering how they're going to behave and take this out into the world. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, JP?
You bet. So in each of our chapters, and actually sometimes each section of each chapter, we put the principles into practice. So there's a DSD, or do something different, is what we call our activities. Do something different, because that's, as we know, that's how we create new neural pathways. We use neuroplasticity to our advantage. And we talk very specifically about that concept with our readers. So do something different, and we give them something to do. It may be a one time, but more often than not, it's do this for the next week or the next 20 days or the. So we want to help them establish these positive habits, habits around, really strengthening their emotional intelligence, their mindfulness practices, so that they become so receptive to these skills that they're developing. So literally every chapter has multiple DSDs for them to really dig into. That's why it also lends itself so beautifully to our workbook and curriculum. Because it's all right there. And so ultimately, when this curriculum is in schools and the teacher who's facilitating it, bonus, that teacher is going through the same curriculum.
Yes.
Perhaps they have us on video talking about the content, but then the exercises and the activities they're doing together.
Yes.
Learning how to apply these concepts in the moment, not 10 days from now, but in the moment. They're learning how to apply and interact with each other in a way that develops these skills, these characteristics, these traits.
Well, also a more equal kind of partnership with the adult, because the adult is the newbie along with the teens. They're learning and being vulnerable with one another. And also, I love what you described in your DSDs. In our world, we say that awareness is the cupcakes at the party. Putting things into motion is the vegetables that we don't always feel that attracted to. But what you described when you say we have them do something for like a week is what most people would call a SMART goal. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's time bound, it's real, it's related. And when they have that in a way that is not a huge bite, but it's enough of a bite where they can say, wow, I set on that and I accomplished it. Now I feel the success of that. So I love it that you do that. You look like you want to say something in response. I know I'm chomping at.
We use smarter goals. And it's actually smarter choices, because we focus on choice instead of goal, because choice we can do every day. Even the long-term goal becomes a choice, but smarter, specific, meaningful, aligned.
Oh my God. I'm going to steal this from you, JP.
Absolutely.
Please do. Time bound, or I forget the R. Relevant. R is relevant. Time bound. E is
I don't remember.
That's
And
okay.
R,
That is great.
R is reflective.
Yes.
So
I absolutely love it because even the idea of goals feels so machine-like, mechanistic.
Mhm.
Whereas it really starts with a mind shift,
right.
being aligned, being relevant, being meaningful, being purposeful, being intentional, and
Yeah.
realizing it is a choice. What am I?
Choices are more in the present. A
Yeah,
goal always seems out there. And honestly, goals can feel heavy sometimes.
they can.
But
Oh my God.
choices, that's giving you power today.
Yes.
And that's how we help young people put this in play. Like we go through all of these pieces. You've got your values, you got your emotions, your purpose. We've had all of these DSDs that are building them up to the point where we're asking them and challenging them to make long-term choices, mid-range choices, monthly choices, weekly, and then ultimately daily choices that support your long-term.
Yes.
So if I have a choice, and this is an easy one, which I know you resonate with, Judy, if I choose to live a life I love,
Yes.
well, that means something different to you than it does to me, but I've envisioned what that is.
Yes.
So I know what it is. And so I can take it back. I can say, all right, in a year, if I'm living a life I love, what does that look like? In a
Yes.
month, what does that look like?
Yes.
This week, today, what am I doing to create those emotions
Yes.
that mean I'm living a life I love? And
Yes.
as we know, the best way to create new habits, other than just doing it, is to make sure there's strong emotion tied to it.
Totally. It's
And
really
we're rewiring.
when we do our course on Blueprint, where you define purpose, core values, and visions, because you're describing visions. If I want to love my life, I have a vision for what that looks like, maybe multiple visions.
Yes.
But if I jump in at the goals level, which is the fourth stage, then I've bypassed all that sense of meaning and all that emotion.
Yep.
And so it's beautiful that you are helping them. I am so grateful for learning your idea of smarter and not smarter goals, smarter choices, because I think it is a reframing that we all need to have that makes our emotions and our process as important as the outcome.
Yep.
And that is absolutely beautiful because we think we do that, but we don't. We neglect it. So, wow. Wow.
Yeah, well, we're teaching them about reverse engineering and how the journey should feel the same way as the outcome.
Yes. Reverse engineering the pleasant, the positive, the empowering, because you can't build on anything but assets and strengths and positive experiences. So if we're only focusing on what is going to go wrong, which kind of leads me into something that you and I both really value, is you use some of the work from Duncan's,
Chris Duncan.
Christopher Duncan's work
Yeah.
on his book, You're Not Broken.
Yeah.
And I love that because it kind of fits with our model as well. That
Mm-hmm.
when we believe people are broken, that they need to be better, that they need to be fixed, we kind of throw them into the inferiority complex, that feeling of shame, and that there's something wrong with me, which is the crux of all struggles. And so when we assume you're not broken, I'm not broken, you are great, even if you don't show up great, you want to be great. And I trust you want to be great. And you just need to get out from under all these beliefs you've been bought into that you're not okay. Can you tell a little bit more about how that has influenced your work?
Absolutely. So when I discovered Chris Duncan's work, I was firmly in a problem solving mode.
Yes.
It had been my whole life. And darn it, I was good at it. I was really good at it until I got sick.
Mm,
and and I had to think about what will work look like moving forward.
yes.
And so I began to think, like, how do I solve this problem? And so when I was, listening to Chris and then ultimately reading his book as well, it helped me make a mind shift out of problem solving mode and into creation mode. And when you're able to do that is when you firmly understand that nobody's broken.
Nobody. No.
Now, your structure may be, you may be stuck in problem solving. And so you keep finding problems, which is what makes you believe you're broken.
Yes.
But
It's a
in coaching,
cycle.
right? Oh, it's a self-perpetuating cycle.
Yes.
In coaching, and specifically the way we do it, using positive psychology and all the work that Holly's done, all the work that I've done, we're focused, we're future focused.
Yes.
And we're focused on choices, as we just talked about. We're focused on creating. So with that client I spoke of earlier who broke the wall and the door and all that, at no time did we focus on fixing a problem.
Yes.
We focused on what the ideal relationship would feel like and would be and how it would look with his parents.
Yes.
And that's what we focused on.
You're actually doing you're actually doing appreciative inquiry without calling it appreciative inquiry, because that's all about looking at what would be the most ideal, what would be the happy story. And I also love it that when you talked about how we can either focus on the problem or we can focus on the creation. And we can focus on what just happened, or we can focus on where do we want to use our power going forward. Alfred Adler, we use his psychology, but it's very similar in that we're always creating our own reality. So we might as well get intentional about what we're creating. And you said something, you didn't call it a system, but you said the framework might be the structure. You called it the structure. Well, we have a saying in our work, and it's don't ask why is this happening and who's to blame. Ask what system, if it were put in place, would solve this. But, and I bet you a lot of women listening might say, oh, it's kind of like a typical man to want to be a problem solver, but I know plenty of women that are also problem solvers. And a lot of times we just problem solve probably more than men do it this way, where we think we're the problem when we have to fix ourselves. And so I think it's just something our whole society struggles with, is this idea something's wrong. And one of my quotes that I really love is by Einstein, where he said, we can't use the same thinking to get out of where we've gotten to, because that thinking is what caused the situation. I don't even want to call it a problem. So if the new thinking is there's nothing wrong with you, and the idea that there is the problem, then you can really help people stop coming from that place of there's something wrong with me. Or the adult in the life of a young person thinking, oh, if I don't give him a carrot, he's going to be selfish and lazy. Oh, if I don't threaten him, he's going to be unmanageable. Oh, if I don't judge him favorably or unfavorably, he's going to get out of line and not please me the way that I want to be pleased. Or if I give up on somebody because I think, oh, it's just too hard on them, they're not strong enough or great enough. All of those things work against a person knowing they're not broken, because you're holding a limiting belief about them. So I can see you had some thoughts popping. I don't want to leave them out there.
So just thinking about that, how often do parents, myself included, until I did a lot of work, how many parents pin their own ego on their child's achievements or their child's behaviors or their. This work again allows a parent and their child to walk through an experience together, separate journeys. They're on their own journey, but to develop the skill set to be able to be self-reflective, to recognize that they do have the power to choose. And so that they get out of that cycle, certainly of problem solving. Judy, for me, it was life altering. Literally, it was a total shift for me in perspective that allowed me to step out of the worst place in my life, the lowest point of my life, and move forward powerfully and ultimately to create this together.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how the universe can work that way? Sometimes it has to knock us on our butt with an illness or something. But what I also love about, you talk about everybody's on their own track. Totally true. Adler's psychology is called individual psychology, because we're all moving through our own life. That's why it's so important to recognize each other as separate but equally valuable. And what I love about what you're talking about is, yes, we're all on these separate tracks, but now we're holding a positive view of one another. We're not holding each other as enemy or as suspect, or we have to suppress you or control you or dominate you. So you're really helping young people to feel okay and to feel okay about every aspect, including their personal power, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So
Well,
Holly, what are
part
your,
of teaching teens and young adults that they're not broken is through teaching how the mind works, how the brain works, how emotions work, so that they can see that, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I've just had a very human response to
yes,
outside circumstances, or just understanding through neuroscience, how they get stuck in negative thought loops. So understanding, just even from a scientific aspect, that they're not broken.
yes. You know what's so interesting about that? Like the root of our work is Adler's, he coined the phrase inferiority complex. It's really a belief we're broken or that there's something wrong with us or that we're not as good as. And Brene Brown teaches on it in her own way. Now she's newer, but she calls it shame and vulnerability, same thing. And what's really critical to that is when we believe that, it's under all misbehavior. It's under all war, all isms, all struggles, all internal struggles, all external struggles. So the very fact that you're helping these young people realize your power is beautiful, your power is good, you are great. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't have to be better. They can put aside the very thing that causes them to struggle and misbehave, which we all want to control misbehavior, but misbehavior is a feeling state of I'm not okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're taught, on a daily, weekly basis that if you have a kid that's misbehaving, they're not giving you a hard time. They are having a hard time.
Mm-hmm. So that's what you're teaching or what has been taught?
That's what's been taught. Like the schools where I've taught have been for kids who just could not thrive in traditional classrooms for learning differences, emotional challenges. So we have been taught that as teachers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most important, well, I mean, they're all seven of the attitudes of mindfulness are critical, but one, to begin with a beginner's mindset
Mm-hmm.
and to be curious. So
Yes.
so we do through becoming uncommon, it's challenging young people to be curious about why somebody reacted the
Yes.
way. What's going on? What might, again, developing empathy, that perspective taking, those DSDs, challenging them to take somebody else's perspective and really try to understand. It's again something we do in our individual coaching. And by the way, sometimes our best coaching is when one of us has the teen and the other has the parent, because we take, again, they're on parallel but separate paths, and
Yes.
just potentiates, just exponentially drives the progress. But helping them see somebody else's perspective, so that they can maybe alter how they're approaching.
Yes, I love that because, well, not only are you teaching them, it sounds like, to be curious about one another, but you're really teaching them to be curious about themselves. And all of that curiosity strengthens critical thinking. It strengthens social interest in what am I causing other people and what if I feel this way when I do this behavior, maybe that's what they're going through or something similar. So all that curiosity creates it takes us out of that place where we just blindly follow what we've been conditioned to believe is the one answer.
Mm-hmm.
That makes us much more dynamic in our lives, much more able to think for ourselves and create on the fly and not feel like we have to just look to someone else to give us a formula. It
Correct.
comes from within, right?
And that's, I mean, again, it goes back to having that emotional intelligence to realize that there isn't one answer. There are
Right.
many answers. There are many different perspectives that I can consider. And
Yes.
for some people, traditionally, as you identified earlier, sometimes parents, that can be a scary thing. mean, my child is going to have, a lot of different opinions. Absolutely. And when they know who they are, when they're solid in their core values, when they know or have an inkling about their purpose in this life and know how they want to feel, I don't think you have much to worry about.
You don't.
In terms of them having opinions, because they're rooted in positive core beliefs.
And secure feelings.
Right.
I literally do the work I do because I did not get that letting them be themselves. Even my mission to create a world in which all people love their lives, I put emphasis on love their lives. So we have to allow one another to have our individual paths. I know we're getting ready to wrap up here. I feel like I could talk to you guys forever. I'm so excited about what you're doing next. How can people get a hold of you? And then I want to make sure that we close just really affirming this work you're doing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Of course, one of the best ways to get in touch with us is through social media, Uncommon Education Company on Facebook, or at Becoming Uncommon on Instagram. Yeah. And that is at becoming__uncommon.
Yes, awesome. Well, I'm so glad.
And our website, of course.
And we'll send you some of these clips so that you can send them out with these, because I think there's tons of adults that are desperate for this kind of support and they don't know you're out there.
Correct.
And there may even be some young people that'll say, hey, mom, or hey, teacher, we need this in our school. And so my hope is that you are part of creating that world in which all people love their lives, because you are for win-win. You are for a restoration of power within and power between and power for one another. And yes. I am so grateful that you are out there doing this and that you are going to make such a positive difference. People believing in themselves, people knowing that it's safe to be alive and to be part of this world, no matter how challenging it gets. So thank you so much.
Well, likewise, we feel the same way about you, Judy.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just invite the listeners to really check out what JP and Holly are doing and really go that extra step so that you can get involved with them and help them scale this important work out to the world, and to continue to listen to When Everyone Wins and create a world in which everyone loves their lives. Thank you so much, everybody. You've been listening to When Everyone Wins, where we're shifting power over and under to power within and between. I'm Judy Ryan, your transformation talk radio host. Tune in each second and fourth Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time to learn new concepts and tools and listen to conversations I have with thought leaders and change agents. You'll also see real-world applications of what I'm covering so that you experience the power of the concepts and tools I share. In each episode, I bring you my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWork Systems. I invite you to call in with your unique stories and questions. The path to ensure that everyone wins depends on our ability as people to create a life we love and help others do the same. For more information, visit lifeworksystems.com.